Thank you very much. That was very kind of you. Intellectual property. I have a problem with this because I rather hate it. I always think that, you know, what if somebody copyrighted the wheel? We'd all have been broke, you know, for millennia. So I'm kind of in a difficult position talking about it because I've earned my living the way my parents forced me to do. I mean, I didn't actually want to be a fashion designer first choice. I wanted to be an archaeologist or a trapeze artist or an inventor or a film director. And they said, no, you've got to earn your own living. And you can't earn a living doing any of that. And there's no women field directors because we're talking about 2,000 years ago. And so I picked fashion because, you know, like all teenagers, I love clothes, you know, and I think teenagers always will. It's a bit of a mad choice, and I wondered whether I was going to get bored with it actually sooner than I have. Surprisingly, I still find it interesting, but I think life is a journey. I'm finding other different bits more interesting. One point I'd like to make, since we're in the British Library, historically 56% of all world inventions are British, 22% American, 6% Japanese, which is something to be very proud of. I hope that we carry on with 56% of world inventions being British, but unfortunately, the sort of collapse of, I think, of our educational system, that's highly unlikely, but it's something we'd all write to our MPs about. I suppose my use, I'm afraid I've been doing sort of tours of fabric fairs and conferences, and so I haven't written many pages on this, but I think my use to you is probably going to be mostly in questions afterwards. But I suppose I have to say that my usefulness, I know how to do it on the cheap, because I created a brand in 1979, Katharine Hamnett, London, from a borrowed 500 quid from an old boyfriend who was married to Biscuit Queen. And by 1985, we were turning over 60 million a year globally. Okay, that was including licensing. We licensed a lot of products in Japan. I think we were about the first people to license into Japan. We did it early. But so I can tell you all the shortcuts, I think, and how to do it on cheap. And Denise is going to kill me because there's ways that, like, the first thing you want to do is, like, you've got to think of a name. It could be your name. It could be another name. A lot of people use made-up names like Exxon. You know, this is a good name because it's not a common name. There's a lot of John Exxons wandering around. So, you know, it's quite likely that nobody would have registered it. First way to find out, obvious, Google search. Use search engines. You've got any idea of any name you want to do, and it's amazing. We've been doing this all the time. We think, oh yeah, we're going to do like a little group called such and such. 75,000 people have already done it. So it saves you a lot in lawyers' bills, though. So, you know, it's time is money, you know. It saves time and it saves lawyers' bills. So my lawyers' bills are huge. The amount of money that I have spent on lawyers, I just would be ashamed to tell anybody. So choose the name that hasn't been registered before, either your own name, made-up name. If you're a designer, the trick is early on. So I'm a very lazy person, so I want to be a fashion designer. I want to make as much money, since I've apparently got to earn my own living, as fast as possible, so I don't have lots of time off. So you need to get your name on a brand, on a label. And to do this, you may actually have to go into a bit of manufacturing yourself on the quiet, you know, so that you could get it in a magazine and it's designed by. This is the first step. Certainly, if you're going to be a fashion designer, is get your name on a label anyhow you can. And then when you get freelance jobs, you can charge more. Yes! Trademark registration. Right, we've got the name. Names actually aren't all that important. The first name that we registered was, I set up business actually on leaving college, you know, as we said, 2,000 years ago, in 1969, with a girlfriend. I was actually rather poor at college, so I had to work my way through college, and I had quite a successful freelance business by the time we were leaving, and she hadn't. And she said, we're going to go into business together. And I said, oh, all right, because I'm very weak. And we couldn't think of a name for ages. Her name was Anne Buck, and my name was Katharine Hamnett by that time. And so we spent weeks thinking about it, and then we finally got a mixture of Buck and Hamnett, came up as Tutabankum. This scored really well when they had the Tutankhamun exhibition, we had Americans ring up and say, how late do you stay open? We're saying, well, actually, if you leave $2,000 by the drain pipe at the back of Cheltenham Street, we see they organise a special opening. But the point I'm trying to make was that the name isn't actually that important. It's what people subsequently associate it with. What you put into that product. That's the thing. So don't waste too much time. If it's a nice made-up name like Uzu, Zuzu, Zuzu, which there's probably 25,000 of them already there, just get cracking with the product because it's down to product. The product that's associated with the name is all important. Now, trademark registration, Denise Block-Curious. Spohr and Fisher are very, very good. They do handle trademark registration. They're a UK based firm, and we've used them for a long time. They're cheap, they're efficient, and you need to speak to Wayne. But if you can't afford to register your trademark, which is like your name, the domain name registration is much the cheapest. I think it's about 30 quid to get EU.com registration. So grab that first. Ideally, you look at the areas you're likely to trade in for whatever product you're doing. But for us, it's EU, which saves you having to register in 22 countries, which we used to do in the past and was really expensive. EU, bang, you've got the lot. US, great. Japan, China. And I recommend India, actually, because I think India is very exciting at the moment, and I think it's the only economy that's growing at 10%. Fabulously organised, socially integrated, middle-class kids being sent off to Stanford, etc., to get fabulous MBAs and coming back with family values. India is really working. So register India as well. Take the .com if you can. But that's a really good start, because that means you've got it. And anybody wanting to register the same name will look and, they will do, the search engine, find that there's these .coms everywhere, and they won't even bother because they'd know if they want to do it, they've got to buy it back off you. And you can charge them a fortune, as people used to, until there was, I think it was Virgin or something. It was called something like a 1 in 1,000. People used to be in the habit of registering domain names of existing companies. I think even people like Olivetti had their domain names registered. And they were saying, oh, but we are not doing anything with it, we are not making money. And then it was proved that actually they had done it, so that Olivetti would have to pay them lots of money to get it back off them. And so that's all gone out of the window. But if it ever happens to you, it's called 1 in 1,000. Block-Curious Denise.